Welcome back to the Affordable Fisherman. Today I want to go over how you can get started fishing for right around $50. And I know this was a requested video from Owen, so shout out to you for the video request. I will hopefully answer your question of how to get started fishing. Now right off the bat, the first thing you definitely are going to want to go and pick up is a fishing rod and reel combo. I would personally get it with line that is not on there. So I'll get the rod and reel with no line on there. One that I bought right in the beginning of this year was this Daiwa D-Shock E662M combo. It came with a different reel. This is a quantum reel that I have on here. I'll throw a picture up here somewhere of what the original looked like. But I picked this up for $20, which is a really good deal considering that this is, I think this is a 6'6" medium heavy rod. So I can use this for a lot of different species. You can use this for bluegill. You can use this for almost any type of panfish, including bluegill. But you can also use it for larger fish like bass. So you'll get, this is a really versatile rod and reel combo. So this is just a really good overall deal for $20. Now, next thing you're obviously going to need to pick up here is some line. Now, what do I recommend for line? I recommend you pick up some Trilene 8-pound XL monofilament line. That's just really good for a lot of different species. I've caught some really nice smallmouth, but I've also caught some really nice and small panfish at the same time. So you can catch a lot of different fish with this line, and it's not expensive either. I think I paid $4 or $5 for this line, and I would personally recommend, this isn't a necessity, but I would recommend go getting it spooled at Gander Mountain or somewhere else that spools it for you, simply because they just do a really good job, and then you don't have to worry about that, or doing it wrong, or wasting your line. Now that you got your fishing rod, fishing reel, and some line, you need something to actually fish with. So what are you going to use? You're going to need some hooks. I would personally recommend going smaller rather than bigger, because you can catch a big fish on a small hook, but it is harder to catch a smaller fish on a big hook than vice versa. So definitely go smaller than bigger. Like this gold hook here, it kind of acts as a free attractant since it reflects the light well, so I would definitely go with a gold hook over like a standard cheaper bronze hook. It doesn't really cost any more. It's definitely worth it. Now you'll also definitely need some varying size lead split shots, and don't get the steel ones. It's going to make your fishing a lot harder, especially when you're first getting started, because the fish are probably going to go peck at your split shot instead of your hook, and that can be, you know, very frustrating. So you don't want to do that. You want to get some large lead split shots, but you also want to get some smaller ones too. I'll get 2 packs, one of the large and one of the kind of medium to small size there. Overall, that's not going to be very expensive. That'll probably run you somewhere around $4 for both of them. Now, you almost have what you need to get started, but you need a couple more things yet. First off, you need some pliers. You just really need some pliers in order to, whenever you catch a fish, if the hook does get stuck farther down in the fish than just at the lip, then you're definitely going to need these to get the hook out. These were roughly $7, give or take, but they can also cut your line, which is really nice because then you don't need to buy a separate line cutter, and you're good to go for $7. Now, 2 more things before I would actually get started rigging up my fishing pole would be definitely getting a tape measure for sure, especially if you're planning on keeping your fish, or even if you just want to know how long your fish is, so you can say, yeah, I caught this long of a bass, along with a scale. You definitely don't want a scale, just so you can say, you know, I caught this big of a fish. You know, the combo there, I think that cost me total like $6. It's not expensive. I would definitely recommend picking that up along with this spinnerbait. Now, if you don't have a lot of money, like I said, you want to fish for $50, you definitely are going to want to pick up a cheap spinnerbait. Now, this thing was like $4. Don't go too cheap, because then it's not going to work well. But this was like $4, and I've caught numerous pike over 20 inches. It's just a really good spinnerbait. This is a Strike King yellow color with gold spinner blades there. You're definitely going to want at least the willow leaf, but the Colorado blade is definitely nice as well. So now that you have all the gear that you need, what does the rig that you're going to use actually look like? Now, when you're first starting, this is definitely the rig I would use. That would be your bobber here, your split shot somewhere around here, maybe a little farther down, but not too close to your hook. And I'll go over how to actually rig this in a couple of seconds here, but I just want to show you what that final product is going to look like before you get started. Now, one last thing that I did forget about is a bobber. You definitely going to want to pick up a bobber if you haven't been fishing before, at least not very often, so you can kind of make that neurological connection between feeling the fish bite and actually seeing it, so you can know exactly when you're getting a bite versus where it's just maybe a little bit of current in the water that you're fishing. Now, as far as price of these go, it's probably like $1 or so, but I mean, you can find them floating around all the time. So, I mean, what did this cost me? $0 because I just found it floating around. So, I mean, you can pick them up for free usually. You just can find them floating around somewhere. But if you do want to get a new one, kind of like this little thing here, I think it was like $1. So, you know, not really going to break the bank, but definitely a nice little option. Now, to set up this rig, it's actually quite simple, but the first thing you need to do is take your line and put it through the hole in the hook, but you want to make sure you have a nice clean end that you're working with, so make sure that is a fresh cut. That'll just make it a lot easier while you're tying this to put it through the hook hole there. So the first thing you want to do once you get this is to tie a knot, obviously, but what kind of knot do you want to use? I personally use 2 8-knots. That's just what I use the most. You know, there's a million different knots that you can do. But in essence, to tie this knot, you just take the what am I talking about? The fishing line, you wrap it around the line coming from your reel, like so, and then you hold on to it, and then you put it through the gap that you have here, and then I'll do this again, so you should be able to see it a little closer up. But, you know, the one time, really, in theory, should be enough, but just to make sure that it doesn't come undone, or anything like that, I like to try it a second time, like so. So you gotta take it around. Well, you gotta take it around, and you gotta hold it. Take it around. Take it around. I personally like to tie it twice just to make sure this doesn't come undone or anything like that. Now, I should have really left myself a little more string to work with than that, but we will make this work. So all you gotta do, bring it behind like that. Once you do that, then you wrap it around. You gotta hold it, which is hard to do with this small amount of string, or string fishing. Why do I keep saying string? Fishing line. And then you just put it through the hole. You gotta grab onto the string. Like string. Why do I keep saying string? This is fishing line. This is not string. And then to tighten it, I usually just take my pliers, hold on to it, and then just pull it tight. You want to make sure you don't have a lot of gap in there, a lot of empty space in that knot, because that will cause your knot to become undone, and thus you will lose your hook, and that is not something you want to do. And then just cut your tail off there, and now your hook is good to go. Now, in order to put the split shot on, you have to open it up, and if yours is closed like this, all you have to do is take your pliers and then put it on the end of here, and then just apply some pressure, and you can see it will open up like so. And then what you do with that is, you know, roughly 6 inches above your hook. Now, obviously, this is going to depend for what you're fishing for. Now, I would personally recommend, if you haven't fished before or you're very inexperienced, start off going for some panfish, because that'll probably be the easiest to catch, and it'll just, you know, it'll be a lot more fun, because it's going to catch probably a lot more than if you were going for a larger species when you're inexperienced. Now, in order to get this on your line, you got to put the line through the opening that you see in the split shot, which I showed you earlier, like so. It's kind of hard to do for the camera, but you put the line through there, and then you just take your pliers, and you got to make sure and tighten it up. Now, when you do this, you want to make sure the line isn't falling out of either end, and what you'll get is something like this. Now, this is a little closer than I would go. I would personally put it probably right about here, which is right at 6 inches. So last thing you have here is just your bobber. Now, how these work is they have a spring on one end, or sometimes they're rubber, but for the spring ones, all you have to do is pull that spring down, take the line, put it through the little lip. In essence, you put this through the lip like so, and then you close the spring back, and that'll allow a little bit of room for you to move it up and down to where it needs to go. Now, this is going to depend on how deep a water you're fishing and what you're fishing for. Now, if you're setting up this rig, most likely you're fishing for bluegill or some sort of panfish, and generally the water you're fishing isn't much more than 3 to 5 feet. Now, personally, most of my panfishing, however you're supposed to say that. Anyways, most of my fishing for panfish is probably a foot to maybe 3 feet of water. and that's about what this is optimal for, because this will sink down about a foot and a half. Now, if you're fishing in like 4 or 5 feet of water, you're probably going to want this rig to be in total somewhere around, you know, about a foot and a half to 2 feet at the most. And that's if you're fishing closer to 5 feet of water. Now, I would try varying spots, because depending on where you're fishing, these fish can have schools at different levels, or they can be wandering around at different depths. Now, I would err probably on the side of having your rig higher rather than lower. Just at first, you know, if it doesn't work, then obviously you can go lower, but you know, most of the time these bluegill will come up and go get your worm. Now, that brings me to my next point, which is, what do you put on the end of this hook here? Now, what you want to do is you just want to rig a nice red worm or wax worm or night crawler, depending on what you're fishing for. If you're fishing for bluegill, I would just use wax worm, because that is going to be the cheapest by far. They're not expensive whatsoever. And then maybe your red worm. Now, night crawlers I usually use with bass far more than when I use them for panfish, but you can certainly use that as well. And I'll use a fake worm to demonstrate how to rig a worm right now. This obviously isn't a wax worm, but it is about the size of any given wax worm that you're going to have. Now, to rig a wax worm, what I like to do is just kind of poke the hook through its head there, wrap it around like so, and then one more time about halfway through the worm, like that. That'll make, you know, somewhat like that, probably a little closer up than what I did there. You know, you're gonna mess this up a couple times, and that's alright, because more likely than not, the fish is gonna go after it anyways, because it just sees bait. These are panfish, they're not really all that smart. Something like that, but you definitely want to make sure that the barb of the hook is exposed, because that is gonna be what catches you more fish. So that is about what you want it to look like for a wax worm. Now I'm going to use a bigger worm and show you how you want to rig a red worm. Say you're using a red worm. Now, say this is a given red worm that you have. It's probably going to be about that long. I would personally just rip it in half like I have done here, simply because you're gonna save a lot more bait, and you're just gonna catch the same number, if not more fish, especially with panfish, because they really like to nibble at different baits, and they'll just end up nibbling your whole bait off unless you rig it properly. Now, I would personally take your hook, and I would probably put it about midway through, about halfway through the worm, and then you want to bring it around, but you don't want your barb to poke through like it did there. You want to bring it around. Keep feeding the worm through until the hook is through about there, and then poke the barb back through. And what this will do on a real worm, like that, like so, this will make the fish, it'll still wiggle all around, it'll look alive, like it's almost not even on this hook here, but you'll still get the hook set when they come and bite it. Now, to rig a night crawler, it's pretty much the same thing. I would probably rip it in half and just rig it the same way you did as with the red worm. Now, as far as, if say you want to use this spinnerbait goes, it's very simple. Instead of tying the hook on, all you have to do is tie the spinnerbait on right here. Now, I would just use the standard 2/8 knots like I said, and it's very easy to use this. All you have to do is cast it out and retrieve it slowly, and I'll do a video on how to fish this, as well as how to fish this, how to cast, all of that, just with a standard fishing pole like the one I showed you here. I'll try and do that sometime this spring, or even before that, late winter. I'll try and get an instruction video out there for that very soon. Hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the Affordable Fisherman. Let me know if you have any other video ideas. If you like this kind of video, just, you know, starting from scratch, what you should get, or fishing on a budget, or fishing with this amount of money, or a fishing this amount of money challenge. Let me know if you guys kind of like that kind of thing or not. Just leave it down in the description below. If you are a subscriber, thanks for watching another video. If you're not, I would really appreciate it if you just go down and hit that thumbs up and subscribe as well. Thanks again, and as always, good luck, keep fishing, see you next episode.